You have written something very interesting in your book. You said that you don't focus on lifespan, but you focus on health span.
That's right. Because I think at the extreme end of when you say biohacking, like my book's called Biohacking Your Genes, I tend to be from a more, I suppose, holistic approach to it. Like some extremes of biohacking are people trying to actually modify the genes, people taking medications with all sorts of side effects like the mTOR inhibitors and various things. But that is at the other end where you're doing unnatural things for you to try and prolong your life by a tiny bit, because some of those drugs have been shown to prolong life by a tiny bit in worms, for example, because there's no other studies, right? Yeah. But so my thing is health span. I said that's all fine, but even if you were living till 75 or 80 or whatever it is, isn't it better if every day you could do everything you wanted to do, you could travel how you wanted because you weren't limited just because of your health by pain or immobility or whatever. But it takes some work. Like as I get older, I find that because during the day you're quite bent over, mostly operating and things like that, you literally have to, do particular kind of back exercises or weights or squats or lifts. Otherwise, my back will feel like it's getting stiff and backache. So you literally have to work on it. Like I know that if I don't do anything for like 2 weeks and I've just blobbed out, right, then I would get backache after work and things like that. But to do the things that you love to do, you have to also keep machine running. I mean, it's the same thing as a car, right? I just think people, you wouldn't, whatever car you drive, say you're driving a petrol car, you wouldn't go and just put diesel in it, right? Because you know it's going to conk out, right?
But you've also said something very funny. You've said all these supplements, when you take a lot of supplements, you just end up having a very expensive urine sample. Right?
Yeah, you can just bottle the urine and sell it. Because the reality is, again, the same thing with supplements. Like I said, biohacking, you can be targeting them. Like your gene type, for example, it helps. If not, you can sort of, even that needs to be targeted. But willy-nilly, if you're just taking all the supplements, the body is going to excrete what it doesn't need anyway. So I really think it just needs to be a bit nuanced. But the idea in Healthspan, I think, is really important, because I think even to just get up and do the things you love, you wouldn't be in the right frame of mind if you were negative about it, depressed, with a lot of pain, unable to move. You wouldn't then be thinking beyond it to the things you want to do. You know what I mean? So I think when people don't have health, they really realize how bad it is, and then they wish they had done something earlier. And then the other way of looking at it is, say I deal with cancer, so sometimes you deal with people at the end of life. I've never met anybody at the end of life, whether they were billionaires or whatever, has ever said that I wish I had bought my 10th car or my 18th house or had my 4th mistress. Like the real things which mattered then were the day-to-day things that, did I spend enough time with my children? Did I do what I wanted to do? And I think everybody becomes humanized at the end. But what's interesting is if you look at it purely economically, because everything nowadays people tend to look on monetary terms, then in the US, for example, studies have shown that people spend 90% of their healthcare costs in the last 1 year of their life. Right. And I would say in places like here, if you would probably say in the last maybe 3 years or whatever, but it's still, it's a lot. So I think the best is a little bit of effort now, and then it goes a long way, right?
It just makes me realize that everything is so connected. Everything is interconnected. You said, one has to be happy. Happiness is also a choice. Now, I feel if your, vitamin D levels or hormone levels are not balanced, you wouldn't want to get up in the morning and exercise because you will have lethargy. You will not feel that happiness is a choice. You feel that life is driving you. You're not driving life.
Yeah. But I think that's true. But I also think metabolic things, any health things, but I think also even otherwise, it's the way you deal with life itself. See, so basically, you see, if you, life is essentially unfair, right? So some people get everything and that's fine, but majority of people, life is unfair. Like you all face obstacles. So if people, like I've moved countries, you know it is much harder to start out somewhere else. Anybody who has dark skin will know they've felt a degree of discrimination. Females now still have face it on a day-to-day basis. So the reality is, world is unfair, right? So when you take it from that perspective, everything is aside. How do you then cultivate positivity? So that's why in that Biohacking Your Genes, I've given a little mnemonic like Vigor, I think I call it. So V is, you have to visualize. And most important thing in life is self-belief is everything. Because I always say to people, look, I remember I was talking to a kid, like you mentioned earlier, I work with kids sometimes in lower decile schools, like the poorer schools, and we teach them to write stories, and writing the stories helps their math and science, because the art of constructing a story is like constructing for science. And literally, but a lot of these children from very poor backgrounds don't have the confidence. And I remember I had this child from the Pacific Islands, and I was asking him, what do you want to become? For a lot of these children, it is not real to become a doctor or engineer or something like that. So I was like, and he said, I wanted to become a barista. I want to make coffee. And I said, okay, so you're going to be the best barista of the whole world, right? And he said that I'll be okay. And I said, look, if you're only going to be okay, right, only your mom would hire you, right? So literally, there is a line which, in my first novel, there is a line where the father's teaching his son to fly kites. And he says, he dreams belong in the clouds. If not, you will not move mountains to reach them, right? So you can't have your vision which is achievable. You got to have a vision which you got to move mountains for, right? So the first one is visualize success, visualize what it is for you. And the second thing is be intentional about it. So what it means is, either for some people, like you mentioned, meditation, that helps. Some people, journaling, like, writing down stuff helps. And other things also, be intentional with your interaction with people. And I think so. The second thing is be intentional about life, be intentional. And the third one is, the gratitude. See, even if you are in a bad spot, there's always somebody much worse off than you, right? So even when you think you don't have this or you don't have that, or you're whinging about something, think about the trouble-torn parts of the world, or where there's extreme poverty, there's no food, whatever. They would trade places with you any day, right? So think of that, and it'd be great. And the fourth one, the O, is the optimism orbit. Like, if you are naturally a person who's going to be down, you have to surround yourself with people who are going to make you feel better, who are not going to constantly put you down or be negative around you. You want an optimism orbit, right? And then the U is the understanding that of each situation for what it is. Like if you're studying for exam, people get too stressed, right? The thing to understand is, look, everyone else who's sitting the exam is having the same thing, right? So it's not just you. It's not going to kill you. You're going to be fine. And I think it's the same thing with preparing for stuff, or when we were setting up for this interview, I was asked whether I was preparing for it. And I said, no, because I want to do this and it will be fine. Because what's the worst thing can happen is I'm not on form and my interview is not as good as what it could have been. But that's just life, right? So you got to understand that once you're intentional and you're doing it for the right reasons, it happens. And then the last one is reinforcement. So if you are on a negative day, go watch the funniest movie, which always gives you a belly laugh, or do some silly jokes or whatever. So all these things is a practiced way of being positive. And as with anything, I think it is helpful, because people sometimes think it isn't natural, because human beings, see, eating, drinking, sleeping, those things are natural. As a human being, we didn't evolve saying, yes, I'm going to be happy. That's a myth. It's almost like, it's like an American myth where everyone's going to be happy, otherwise you go see your psychiatrist, right? You know what I mean? It's that old thing like, I'm going to be the happiest. No, it's not. You got to work towards it if you are naturally negative. If you're always a positive person, that's okay. Maybe you need to work less. But it's like anything else. If you're naturally fit, maybe you need to exercise a little less. If you're really unfit, you need to work more. And it's the same. So I just think the mind, the body, and thereby your skin. So if you have stress, of course it affects your skin. If you have too much sugar, of course it affects your skin. So the thing is, it's all interconnected.